one of the students, when I went and spoke one time, asked me if I would go back and change what happened to me if I could, and I honestly said no, because of all the things I've learned and because of all the opportunities I've been given in the last 10 years.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. I'm Kyle Bryant. And I'm Sean Bompsart. Together, we are constantly seeking opportunities to live beyond our circumstances. All right, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Welcome to episode 52. My name is Sean, and on the other end is Kyle. What's going on, man?
What's up, Sean? Hey, so my birthday was Friday.
It was.
You may or may not. Yeah, you may not know that.
I can feel it in your voice. You sound older.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say I sound like more lively or something. You're excited? No, just old, older. Huh?
Anyway, tell us about your birthday.
Yeah, so I got a lot of really awesome, texts and voicemails and stuff from people, but I wanted to play a specific one.
Yo, 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 yo! Happy birthday.
All right, that is my brother. And he's always just being goofy and singing, making up songs and singing for my niece and nephew and just being funny and I appreciate it. And that voicemail is classic Colin Bryant. Also for my birthday, I requested that people review this podcast. So go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and review the podcast. So today I know that my brother is listening because I asked him if I could use his voicemail on this episode. And so I am specifically calling him out. Colin Bryant, ooh. You had better get your butt to iTunes and review the podcast because I don't think I've seen your review yet. Huh. So,
and Colin, I would probably warn the rest of your family because something tells me Kyle's going to come after the rest of them too. So tell your wife and your mom and your dad, get the kids.
Yeah, I think the kids, they're only 3 and 7, Aubrey and Keller, but I think they want iPhones or something for their birthday. Yeah.
Nice. Well, happy birthday, Kyle. I know it was a good one, and I'm glad that you were able to celebrate another year. Before your birthday, like a week before, was the Ferret Energy Ball, which is a massive, exciting event. Tell us a little bit about that. You were there. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the Avery family started this fundraiser about 10 years ago, and this was the 10th annual. They really got the Tampa community mobilized, all their friends down in the Tampa area. Paul and Suzanne Avery are the instigators and the motivation behind the Energy Ball. They're the ones who got it started. We actually interviewed Paul Avery, right, in episode 29. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to that, Paul Avery, episode 29. And so the Energy Ball, it welcomes 750 guests. And this year it raised $2.5 million.
In one night?
In one event.
Wow.
So there's a silent auction with tons of really cool items. There's a live auction. There's amazing food. And, it takes a ton of people putting their heart and soul into it to make it happen. And, everything from donations to the auctions and volunteers to run the event. The steaks are donated. The drinks are donated. The event organizer, the whole committee, everything. The list goes on, right? And it takes a ton of people, and I am really grateful. One successful event would have been amazing, but they've done it 10 years in a row. And that really drives the research progress, and the effect that this event has had on research progress is absolutely amazing. And so I'm really grateful for the Tampa community. One really cool thing that happened this year was that the Hamilton family, Tom and Karen Hamilton, and again, we interviewed Tom on episode 24. They matched every dollar raised during the Fund a Cure.
Wow.
And, they really reinforce again and again the fact that, we're all going to get there together, and it takes all of us to get to the finish line.
That's really cool. So real quick, Fund a Cure is just so people that aren't familiar with Faraball or the energy ball. It's a 15-minute window where people just give or attempt. It's like a real fast-paced, limited window of time, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's usually, I think, probably a little longer than 15 minutes. But yeah, it's a limited window where people just straight up, they're like, hey, I'm going to give, whatever money I can, so...
That's cool.
And they bid on a little app on their phone, and it shows up on jumbotrons all around the room. So it's really exciting.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks for sharing. What we want to do is get right into our episode. We've got an incredible interview with a author, a speaker, and a mom who has an incredible story. So let's jump right in. Carol J. Decker is a wife and mother of two living just south of Seattle a bit. Her new book, Unshattered, is her family's journey of overcoming tragedy and choosing a beautiful life. A journey that was born out of a sudden and devastating bout with sepsis that thrust Carol into a life of disability after losing her sight, both lower legs and her lower left arm, as well as some other issues. Carol is here to share her story with us. Carol, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here today, and I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Absolutely.
Carol, I'm really excited to talk to you because, partly just to hear your voice because, I listened to your book yesterday. I have to admit, I didn't read it. I did listen to it, and it was really, really moving. I went to lunch at Panera, and I had your book playing in my in my earbuds, and I was just sitting there by myself in my booth at Panera, crying and just being so inspired by your book. So it's really good to connect with you.
Oh, thank you. I know we've done a couple of book signings, and we've handed out travel-size Kleenex and chocolate when we read the book.
That's so funny.
So, Carol, tell us a little bit about yourself today. We know you're in Washington. What's the family life like for you? What's your work life? Just kind of give our listeners a glimpse of who you are today.
Well, first and foremost, I am a mother, and that's my greatest joy, and I love being able to walk my kids to school. We just live a few houses down from the school, and I try to do just normal daily living with my family as much as I can with my limitations of being blind and an amputee, and I just sort of adapted to my world and set up a lot of things in my home so that I am able to do all of those things like the laundry or do my makeup or pick out my own clothes and, make meals, which is still not my thing that I'm very good at. I used to love to cook, and it's still really hard for me. I'm a little afraid of the oven. So, but I speak professionally and at different conferences and schools and different groups of church affiliations, and share my story of hope and gratitude and how I live my life, with a different perspective now. And I just, like I said you said earlier, just finished writing my book, and it just came out in June, and just trying to keep up with my family. So
it's exciting for sure. So I love hearing that you're adapting and moving forward, and obviously, for those listeners who haven't heard of your book or heard your story, your journey up to this point has been one that's been incredibly just devastating and difficult at times, and up and down and all over the place. And like Kyle said, just reading or listening to your book, what a phenomenal, inspiring story. So without spoiling your book, and I know from listening to your book myself that some of the memories of the 2 months in the hospital are a little hazy, but what can you tell us? Recap a little bit of that story, if you don't mind.
No problem. Of course, you're listening to my voice right now, and I sound, upbeat and positive, and that's how I live my life now. But there were definitely some really dark days and despair and depression, and at one point I really didn't want to live, and I didn't know how I was going to do all of the things that I needed to as a wife and a mother and a friend, and it was definitely a struggle for me. Those first 2 months, I don't remember a lot just because I was, in a drug-induced coma. But once I was able to speak with my trach placed, going through the skin grafting and the amputations and the reality that I wasn't going to see again, it was a lot to take in. And I try to explain to people when I'm in the hospital, you don't really, at least for me, I didn't really go through the reality at that point because I was sleeping so much and heavily sedated on drugs and just sort of doing, the routine of whatever the nurses and doctors wanted me to do. But my reality kind of hit when I came home. I went into the hospital on June 10th of 2008, and I came home about mid-September that same year. And the first moment I came in the house, my husband had to carry me in and put me on the toilet, and I couldn't help, do that for myself, and he had to carry me to the bed. I felt like pretty much a small infant, and the pain and anxiety and everything just kind of went out of control, and I begged my husband to take me back to the hospital the first day I came home because I didn't think I could do it.
Tell us, we mentioned sepsis, but you were pregnant at the time with your second little girl, and you, from what I remember, you started feeling some contractions, but also you were in a little bit of discomfort or pain. Were you not like, what? This, from what I know, everything kind of came out of nowhere and just started to take over your body. What exactly sent you to the hospital? And without telling your whole book, what transpired after you got to the hospital wondering what the heck was going on?
Yeah, I worked in the medical field as a medical assistant for years in cardiology and diabetes, and I had read about sepsis in life and didn't ever suspect that, being in my early 30s and pregnant with my second daughter, that would happen to me. I really honestly just felt like I had the flu. I woke up with a fever, excuse me, and thought, that I was pregnant. I was almost 8 months pregnant at the time, so you're tired anyways. And as I'm, trying to pick up my daughter from her crib, my older daughter, Chloe, I just was having a difficult time, and I was also the week before had some left flank pain that wrapped around to the front, so they thought maybe I passed a kidney stone or something like that, but we were really unsure of the source of where the blood infection came from, resulting in the sepsis. So my bacterial blood infection was caused from strep pneumonia, which leads to sepsis, which is an overwhelming reaction to that infection and can cause organ failure and tissue damage, which is exactly what happened in my case. So the reason I did go to the hospital is because I couldn't get my fever down. It went up as high as 103.7. And then, like you said earlier, I had contractions with my second daughter that led me to go to the hospital. I think, now looking back, people are like, oh, you must have a really high tolerance for pain. So not getting to the hospital sooner, but I had been in the hospital the week before, and I guess I didn't feel like it was that emergent until I did have the contractions. I didn't really think that I would go into sepsis.
So then, sepsis takes over, and, there's a whole cascade of events that kind of happened after that. Can you just give a brief rundown of what happened? The doctors say you have sepsis. You said you don't really, like, you read about it, but you didn't know, all the details. So what exactly happened after that?
So, yeah, I called my husband from work, and we drove up to Seattle from where we live, which takes about an hour usually, but I think we got there in 30 minutes. And went to the doctor's office first, and they gave me a shot to kind of slow down the contractions, and they noticed a rash on my face, and the only other symptoms I had was the fever and contractions, and so they wheeled me over to the hospital, to the labor and delivery unit, and by then I was, begging for some pain medication, and they gave me a shot and put on the fetal monitor, and I guess, our blood pressure started to plummet, and all of a sudden the doctor and the anesthesiologist and nurses were like, we have to get the baby out now. And I didn't know at the time that I had sepsis. I had no idea. And my husband went over to the corner to call my mom and let her know we were going to have the baby early, and so they're wheeling me back for this emergency C-section, and I'm, asking the nurses if my husband can come with me, and they were like, no, and I kissed my husband goodbye, and little did I know that would be the last time I would ever see his face, and was put into that drug-induced coma where I was in a literal fight for my life, and Sophia was, they were worried that she was going to have some sort of infection as well, but she never did. She had to spend 5 weeks in the NICU, and she's a little fighter. She was born 4 pounds, 15 ounces, which is pretty big for a preemie. She was 7 weeks early. And my fever went as high as 106.9, and when you go into sepsis, your body's smart. It wants to save your major organs, and so your extremities kind of become the latter thing that it wants to save. So my feet, my hands started to turn black in different parts of my body, and then a second complication came from the sepsis called DIC, which is where your blood doesn't know whether to clot or to bleed, and so I started forming wounds on the tops of my thighs and my abdomen and my forearms, and my skin started to slough off, so they had to debride that skin, and that's why later on I needed to have skin grafting, and they removed the skin from my back to use as my donor tissue on those affected areas.
My goodness. So, wow. Right. So, I mean, you're feeling a little uncomfortable at home, and you think you have the flu, and then you go to the hospital like, hey, something's not right. And like you said, you kiss your husband goodbye, and to this day, you've never seen his face again because that sepsis also took away your sight.
Right. It caused ocular neuropathy, which damaged the nerve that attaches from your eye to your brain. So my eyes are healthy in that, but just that cord, that nerve was damaged. So sometimes when I look at people, they think that I'm not blind. They think I'm looking at them because I try to look at people's faces and project where their voice is coming from. So,
in your book, you talk about, just experiencing things in a different way. Like all these experiences, you think like somebody who can see thinks, oh my gosh, all these things were ripped away from you. And I feel like one of the points in your book is, no, these things aren't ripped away. They're just experienced in a different way. Like, I mean, towards the end of your book, when you're talking about surfing and skiing and all this stuff that you do, it's just different, not taken away.
right. No, exactly. I have kind of when I go and speak sometimes regarding disabilities, I have this thing that I say where the D in disability stands for different, that we just have to do things different than most people and find our own way. And the I stands for individual, that each of us have individual disabilities. Even though I can be in the same room with another amputee or another blind person, our disabilities can be be different, like amputations can be different, or pain levels can be different, or sight problems can be different. And that we need to remember that those disabilities are individual to ourselves. And then the S is for support, that we just need help. Every day I have to ask for help, which is hard, but I've learned to accept that. And once you do accept that, you can really, progress a lot more. And then you're left with the word ability. So.
That's good. I like that. Yeah. Can I borrow that? No, it can't. She straight up said cannot. You guys can't have that. That's wonderful. That's a good, great perspective for sure.
First of all, you go through that loss, and loss is hard. We all experience it in different ways. Again, I don't know what it's like to lose a parent yet, and I don't know what it's like to have cancer or lose a child, and so why is my loss any greater than anyone else's? It's just different, and we have to adapt to it differently. And for me, I had this perspective that I should be dead and that I have a chance to be here, and I wanted more than anything to be a mother to my 2 daughters. I waited a long time to have my babies, and I had a loving husband and family that was there for me. And if I didn't try, then I wouldn't know if I could actually do it, And so I was willing to try, and I did find that appreciation for life and that new perspective that I am going to have new experiences just in a different way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wrote down one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and it was super powerful to me. You were talking about, you couldn't change the source of the disability, but you could change how you react to it, I guess, is sort of how I forget how you said it, but that really, really hit me pretty hard when you were talking about that. Because, you talk about all this devastation. I mean, you lose your feet, your hands, your sight, skin grafts, and all this stuff, and then, you come out the other side and you're like, all right, I can't change that, but here's what I can have control over. Right.
It's exactly right, and I just had to relearn how to do everything. I did physical therapy inpatient for 5 weeks, and then I did it in my home for 2 years, and then I did another year of outpatient just to learn to do everything again, and to be patient with myself and kind. And sure, it's a frustrating thing, but yeah, and I could take control over that change, and once I accepted that I couldn't change who I was or what happened to me, I could really look to the future and set goals and try to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah, love.
So you talk about all these major changes and yet the ability to kind of look beyond them and kind of make adjustments and move forward. What would you say are some of the major factors that helped you get to a point where you were accepting and able to move forward and not necessarily, at one point you said you felt like you should be dead. Like, what caused you from sinking into that dark place? What are some of the major factors that help you keep moving forward in the face of all this?
Yeah, I feel like I had these little gifts given to me along the way where I would have a moment of, I remember telling my brother in the hospital that I'm never going to make cookies with my daughters again. Mm. When you first become disabled like myself, you think you can't do all the same things that you did before. And that was a big deal to me to make cookies with my daughters. And one day our nanny, we hired someone to stay with us and help me with my children and help me, who was a nurse as well. Her name was Erin Stout, and she brought cookie dough one day and said, "Hey, Carol, we're going to make cookies today." And of course, I'm in my wheelchair. I don't have my legs on at this time. I'm pretty fragile still. And I said, "I can't do that, Erin." And she goes, "Yeah, you can." And she wheeled me over to the table and put my girls up at the table with me, and she started, putting out the dough, and Chloe started rolling it with the rolling pin, and I started to help guide with my arms, and, my baby Sophia's pounding her little fists on the table, and Chloe's giggling, and next thing you know, Chloe reaches over and she touches my nose and my face with her flour-covered fingers. Mm. And it was just like this moment of opportunity, was presented to me, and I realized that I was making cookies with my daughters. And it didn't have to be a certain way. We have this idea of how it's going to be, and it didn't matter that I didn't make the dough or put them in the oven, but I was there, and I was experiencing that moment with them, and I was their mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's incredible. I think the biggest takeaway, I keep saying the biggest thing for me, but there's I think I have 10 from your book. But anyway, one of the other ones that kind of relates to exactly what you're talking about, I think it was when you were feeding your daughter for the first time, and you realized that you were needed, and to find those places where you can be needed is a really powerful thing, or where you can show other people that they are needed. I think to be needed and to understand that concept is a powerful thing, and it hit me pretty hard when I was listening to your book.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest things, that when we do feel needed, that can empower us and make us, feel like we do belong. And feeding my daughter for the first time, I was her mom and she was my baby, and that was, my first sort of interaction with her as mother and daughter, when I didn't even know that I had given birth to her. I didn't have those same moments like most moms do. And also when my brother died, I felt like my mom and my other brother needed me as well. And when I was in the hospital, of course, you don't feel like you're needed. You just feel like helpless, and you can't do anything for anyone else. And I totally agree with that. Being needed does a lot for you.
Yeah, I think because, a lot of our value is based on the value we perceive other people putting into us, right? And so when we feel like other people need us to do something for them, that really makes our self-worth go through the roof, So.
Right. I spoke at a teacher conference, and their word was impact, and I read several different things about that word impact and how we can impact other people's lives. But there's a philosopher and educator called John Dewey that said that the greatest urge in human nature is to feel important, and so we can make others feel important, and others can make us feel important as well, and that's how we can impact each other.
Carol, I'm curious. A lot of people deal with loss. Whether it's the loss of limb or a disability or something coming into life. How did you ever blame anyone or anything for your sepsis or for your battle?
In the beginning, yeah. I don't know if I necessarily like, hey, it's your fault, you did this to me, but I think that's a natural feeling for us to want to blame something or someone. And we all go through those questions, why did this happen to me? Where did I go wrong? And I'm a good person, and it's just, you feel like life isn't fair or whatever. But I think I initially might have had that, but then once I got over that, I have this saying, it's called let go, embrace the moment, and have fun. And let go is about letting go of your fear, and trying to do things that you maybe don't think are possible, but also letting go means to forgive others, or to forgive your situation, or to even forgive yourself, because sometimes we hold ourselves responsible for a lot of those things, and if you keep hanging on to that, you can't grow, and you can't, learn from it. So.
Yep, I think that relates to all of us in difficult situations. As I was dealing with my diagnosis of Friedreich's ataxia, and realizing what an impact it was going to have, not only on my life, but on everyone around me. I felt really bad that I might not allow other people to reach their potential in life because I was like a liability or something. I feel like I read, some of those sentiments in your book, and it's hard, like, okay, there's this thing that's wrong, and whose fault is it? Well, you know what? Actually, it's no one's fault. And it just happened. But we always need to find someone to blame, whether it's us or someone else. And I heard a lot, I related to the moments that you talked about that where you got in arguments with people, and you over just seemingly stupid things, but it was a frustration over the situation that you were getting upset about. I relate, sorry to make this about me, but I relate to that, because I feel like I got in trouble a lot when I was in high school and stuff, and it was really dumb. It was just like arguing with teachers and I would argue with my parents all the time and get mad at people and whatever. And now looking back on it, I realized that part of it was just I was a stupid kid, but part of it was I think I was frustrated at what was happening to me in my life and what it might mean for me in the future, and I didn't know how to vent those feelings.
Oh, totally. Oh, my goodness. Being a mother and, my child draws on the wall, and I would just be so angry and frustrated that happened, and then I was getting mad at my child, but I'm mad at myself because I can't see and help her and clean it up. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
Kind of thing. And another thing I talk about is, when I first came home, I felt like an infant. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't feed myself or clothe myself or anything. And then I went into the toddler phase where when I was rehabilitating, everything was, I did it. Even the smallest
I love that.
And then you move into your adolescent stage, which is don't tell me what to do because I'll do whatever I want. And then you kind of go past that and realize it. But those are all frustrating stages. And as an adult, you get kind of angry because you have to learn to do that again. You're like, I already did this when I was a kid. Why do I have to do this now again?
Yeah.
So talk about some of those things that you said, at the adolescent stage, kind of do whatever you want. And Kyle mentioned toward the end of the book, you talk about surfing and taking a trip by yourself or things like that. So tell us, what has been your most recent response in the last couple of years? What have you been able to do differently that maybe you thought wouldn't be possible 10 years ago?
When I, first got out of the hospital and came home, I used to ask the doctors, okay, how long do you think I have to live? Because that's how frail I felt. And they would look at me like, what are you talking about? But being in that much pain and not being able to do anything. But now here I am 10 years later, and being able to ski with my family was one of my greatest goals and achievements as far as my recovery. You learn to set goals when you're in rehab and when you come home so that you can gain your life back. And one of my goals was when my youngest daughter, Sophia, turned 5, that I was going to go up to the mountain. And the reason for that is because I grew up snowboarding with my brothers when I was 12, and I have this love and passion for the mountain. I love being in the snow and the air and just everything, and that's something I dreamed of doing, just like the cookies, with my family someday. And luckily, there's this amazing organization called Outdoors for All, and they made my dreams come true. So in January of 2014, I signed up for an 8-week course and got on a sit ski, and they took me up the mountain. And February 14th, Valentine's Day that year, I was able to ski with my husband and my 2 daughters for the first time, and it was just the most magical moment of my life. Wow. We had several new inches of fresh powder, and the guys and I tease my husband that I'm way more high maintenance now because it takes 3 guys to go skiing with me. One in the back to tandem. They have a rope attached to me, giving me directions, left and right, and then one guy on either side of me, so I don't take out any small children.
That's smart.
But yeah, we right. We got up to the top of the mountain, and I'm carving back and forth in the powder, and it's just this amazing rush, And I crashed. Of course, I crashed because that just happens, And the guys come running over, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm more than okay. I just want to sit here in the fresh powder and just take in this moment, and to hear your daughters go by and be like, 'Hi, mommy,' like best sound ever." I was like, "Okay, I can go now. I can die. I'm good."
That's amazing. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of living left to do, and you're taking your message to a lot of speaking engagements and stuff like that. Tell us about a little bit about that. How is that going for you, and how does it impact you personally?
Oh my gosh, it's going so well. I've been doing it for several years now. Like I said earlier, someone asked me to come and speak at a small event for mothers and daughters, and I, was crying the whole time and realized that I could turn something bad into something good by sharing my story, and that, that one person that comes up to you afterwards and says, "Thank you so much for sharing. That meant so much to me." And, it empowered me to be able to accept who I was and to share that with other people. And I didn't mean for it to happen. It just sort of happened. The next person would ask me, and the next person. And then as I would speak at these conferences or events, they would say, "Oh, do you have a book?" And I'm like, "No." So, the last couple of years starting putting together an outline for a book, and doing the speaking really helped me to be able to define what I wanted in the book and the life lessons that I've learned and things like that. So, and now I think I do like 3 speaking engagements a month, and awesome. It's super busy and a little overwhelming because I'm like, I don't know how working moms do it. I'm starting to figure that out, juggling being a mom and a wife and working as well. But I do have it's so fulfilling, like I said, it doesn't have to be everyone that takes something away from my message, but that one person that comes up to me afterwards and says, "Thank you," is really special to me.
For sure. There's something powerful when you're in a atmosphere like that and somebody gleans a little bit of hope from your story or a little bit of inspiration, even just for that day or something simple.
Right. And like you talked about earlier, it's like relating. When I first came home, I didn't think I could relate to anyone because I was like, I don't know any other blind triple amputee moms, because we think we have to be friends with the same, kind of people that we're, living our own lives as, and then you feel like you can relate to anyone, and that I've been able to make friends with people that I never even imagined, and those opportunities that have come out of the challenges I would never trade for anything. It's been a beautiful experience.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, so Carol, I really want everyone to know how to get your book because I really, really enjoyed it. So how do people find your book and where do they find you?
Well, I have a website. It's caroljddecker.com. And then the book, you can pretty much, wherever you try to buy things from, whether it's Amazon or Barnes & Noble or different bookstores are carrying it. I even met someone recently, a couple weeks ago, that found it at the library. So I was really excited about that. And she was from Kentucky, so that was really cool. Wow. And so, and you can also, it's on audio, so you can download it and have it in minutes.
It's a weird thing to think about, but are you ever grateful for, well, maybe you did talk about it in your book a little bit, grateful for the adversity that you faced and the challenges in your life and all the terrible things that happened?
I am. One of the students, when I went and spoke one time, asked me if I would go back and change what happened to me if I could, and I honestly said no, because of all the things I've learned and because of all the opportunities I've been given in the last 10 years and the people that I've met. I mean, I would have never met you, Sean and Kyle. You know what I mean? So it's really cool, and to just, sometimes we just have to embrace that change.
Well, what an incredible story that you shared with us today. Great aspects and perspective of how to face some of those challenges and adversities in our lives and find ways to move on. Carol, I'm so thankful that you've joined us today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being on the phone with us today.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Sean and Kyle, for having me.
Of course, I want to remind our listeners real quick, CarolJDecker.com, her book, Unshattered, Overcoming Tragedy. Man, I cannot say it. I'm disabled. Don't make fun of me. CarolJDecker.com, her book, Unshattered, Overcoming Tragedy and Choosing a Beautiful Life is now available on or at all your favorite book platforms. It's available in bookstores or online, or I would encourage all of you to check it out. What an incredible story. Kyle and I both listened to it just in the last few days, and we love it. We're fans.
Yep. Carol, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you to you guys, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
You as well.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our production team, Jake Tompkins and Matt LaFleur.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.